unarmed, mutilated, and left for dead in a desert populated with monstrosities and slavers. Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation. Well, that's a different story for another day. This story is about how I went from bleeding out in the wastelands to one of the most proficient bounty hunters in all of Kenshi. As a fair warning, I have an advertisement for War Thunder at around 10 minutes into the video, so be on the lookout for that. I'm also still dealing with bronchitis, so apologies in advance for the raspy voice, but other than that, let's get into it. Meet Drew Peacock. He looks like if you took Shane Gillis and Opie from Family Guy and smashed them together, or if Wario discovered meth. In all honesty, I found the base model for a gorilla and found out it can be applied to human characters and just couldn't pass it up. Here is our starting point though, out in the middle of Afghanistan with no food, water, and only one of our arms. Forgotten by the world and left for dead. First things first, we need to find shelter. Skimmers and bandit groups roam the Great Desert, making it one of the more difficult locations to start off at. Bark is in the north, so I began making my way over there. While on my travels, I came across a group of goblin bandits attacking some Empire soldiers, which made for a fantastic opportunity. All I needed to do was wait out the fight and then scoop up any gear off the corpses. This would give me a weapon and some armor to start with, and I could sell the rest for some food. After looting the dead, I continued towards Bark, arriving in the evening. Selling the extra weapons gave me around 7,000 cats, which is more than enough to survive on. I also kept the crossbow and some bolts since I've never used a crossbow in Kenshi before, and if I want to become the world's greatest bounty hunter, I figure I'm gonna need to pull off some Hitman level shots. To pass the time, I tried working on thieving, only to realize that missing an arm does in fact add some difficulty to being a pickpocket. I did manage to find this nice little corner to hide in though. After giving up on that, I found a fence thief in one of the bars, bought some pants off of him, and ran onto the rooftops to level my stealth until morning. Going into day 2, I wanted to focus on getting some quick levels into some of the more useful skills, so I got to work picking any locks I could find. Outside of that though, I need a backpack, since I, despite my gorilla appearance, have the strength of a toddler. Unfortunately for me, no shops seem to sell them here. Like, you can buy a pack animal and a carrier for them, but no human-shaped backpacks exist here. I did buy a poncho thinking I could pull off a Daryl Dixon look, only to realize that these things look way better in screenshots than on my deformed body. There's nothing left for me to do at Bark though, so I set off for Heft in an attempt to find a shop that sells robotic limbs or backpacks. Shortly after leaving the city, I ran into Meow and Dezerka, two escaped slaves trying to find their way out of the desert. Unfortunately for them, they ran into me instead of the guy John Wick spent half a movie looking for, and I beat the shit out of them in an attempt to work on my combat skills. After I realized they had nothing of value on them, I healed them up and repeated the process. Eventually, some slavers made their way over and got pissed at me when I kept using their precious property as training dummies. After running for a few more hours, I came across Port South, a slave trade town. No, seriously, the entire town is just slave shops with these little signs. Nothing says Dante's allegory quite like a smiley face locked behind a ball and chain. That being said, the depressive atmosphere didn't stop me from taking advantage of the combat training dummies sitting in their HQ. Outside of the training dummies though, this town doesn't really have anything to offer me, so I left that night, continuing towards Heft. About an hour into my walk, I found an abandoned town and decided to spend the night here, looting the place for anything of immediate value like food or bandages. Judging by the amount of dead outlaws in the area, I'm going to assume that a group of skimmers came through and wiped out the entire town. It's a sad reality in the Great Desert, but they chose to live here, and living here unprepared comes with consequences. Dealing with being encumbered out here is also a death wish, especially when you're missing an arm. I was really confused on what could possibly be weighing me down so much, only to realize that crossbow bolts weigh 5 kilograms each, so I've been carrying 25 kilograms of bolts around while being unable to shoot them. This made it much easier for me to part ways with them once I reached Heft on the morning of day 3. With the money I made from selling the crossbow and bolts, I purchased a thieves backpack, fixing the encumbrance issue. Also, there's a robotic shop here that sells exactly what I need. Only problem? Robot limbs are expensive. Normally, I'd take the San Andreas approach of breaking in and borrowing belongings until I made enough to buy one, but there's a ton of guards at every shop, so there's no real point in trying that unless I want to get beat worse than Tyree kills kids. Unfortunately, I never even got the opportunity to make an honest living here. For some reason, I was mistaken for a terrorist, which is weird because there's not even any monkey bars around. Anyway, they may be samurai police, but I've watched Scooby-Doo enough to know that if I just run around, eventually they'll get lost while chasing me through the same door 5 or 6 times and I'll get away. Since Heft wasn't as welcoming as I would have liked, the only other place I could think of was Stoat. I have a bounty on me now though, so I'll need to be careful around these cities. This is completely unrelated, but if you're wondering how difficult the Great Desert can be, well, just watch this massive group of skimmers spawn directly in front of me. That is what's waiting for you out here. Anyway, I arrived at Stoat to find a bustling city, completely jam-packed with guards and soldiers. Made the decision to leave almost immediately since I didn't want to risk them realizing who I was and then selling me into slavery. We already did that whole character arc last video, we don't need that again. My goal is to get to Mongrel to find a master assassin who I can train under, but it's literally across the map and I still need to navigate the desert with all the threats constantly around me. While impersonating Moses, I accidentally stumbled onto a watchtower being guarded by ninjas. When I tried to enter their fine establishment, I was immediately attacked, causing me to sprint off into the night, losing them on a pack of skimmers. Pushing west, I ran into Okran's Shield, a camp guarded by the Holy Nation Empire. There's not much here that's of any value to me, at least at the moment, but I did manage to find their general storage building. The only downside is that it's crawling with guards. I can't really go toe-to-toe with paladins, so I dipped out of Okran's Shield and continued on my way. I know Stack and Blister Hill are both nearby, so I made plans to stop at both of them to see if I could get myself situated. Arriving at Blister Hill, I found a bar to pass some time at, only to realize that there's no guards on the second floor. Admittedly, my tendencies got the better of me, and I immediately started looting the barrels up here. Filled with guilt for what I'd done, I tried to make amends by earning an honest living mining iron from the nearby deposits. That being said, mining is incredibly boring to me. Like, I get its purpose, I know it's necessary for city building, but I'm not here to spend 100 days becoming the best blue-collar worker in Kenshi. This is all just me making excuses for the fact that I lasted less than a day as an honest citizen before resorting to peacefully protesting all the crates on the second floor of the armor shop. If you're newer to the thieving lifestyle in Kenshi, you can spam XP by stealing gear, dropping it on the floor, and collecting it again. It's a bit exploitative, but I'm gonna need it in a few days, so I might as well farm it out now. If you're wondering just how efficient this method is, well, I was able to go from like level 3 to 51 in 7 in-game hours. I figured that'd be more than enough to get me started, so I spent a few hours searching around for gear upgrades. Managed to swap out my chest armor for black plated armor, which removes the assassination debuff. I also found a better mask and a new shirt before leaving Blister Hill and setting course for Mongrel. I reached the Foglands on the morning of day 5. The big concern here is Fogmen. They tend to roam in large groups and cannibalize anyone they capture. So one mistake here can end the run before we even get started. If done correctly though, Fogmen can be used to level up stealth incredibly fast, which is always a plus. The key word here is correctly, meaning don't try walking through a Fogman camp. That'd be stupid, only an absolute moron would do that. On the bright side, if you're a glue eater like me, you can kite the Fogmen up into Mongrel and let the guards deal with them. They even have this scary ass robot security spider that one-shots people. Anyway, now that we've made it all the way over here, I sold some of the extra gear that I'd taken from Blister Hill and then took a quick look at the skeleton shop. There's much better product here, but that also means it's much more expensive as a result. My initial plan was to just steal a ton of blueprints and sell them back to the various shops, but you're far too likely to get caught selling stolen goods if you stay within the same city. Since there's nowhere close by that's relatively safe to travel to, I tried a different approach. And just like that, Drew Peacock is now Cybercock, or something like that. Outside of thieving, I spent the rest of the day training my stealth skill. There's a cliff over in the corner that you can stand on, and Fogman patrols will pass underneath it where you can safely farm stealth XP without putting yourself in danger. This is unrelated, but I haven't seen Beep yet. He usually sprints over as soon as you walk into the city, and the fact that he hasn't yet makes me feel like the Fogman might have gotten to him before I could make it here, which is a little depressing. Guess we won't be getting a Cyberbeat montage this video, and I'm officially out of master to train me. After spending a few hours waiting around for Fogmen, I got bored and spent the initial hours of day 6 hunting for Fogmen patrols to grind. Eventually, I just caved and went back to that Fogmen camp I walked through earlier and farmed them until morning. It was slower progress, but slow progress here beats anywhere else in the game in my opinion. Over the next 5 hours, I was able to get my stealth up to level 52. Honestly, there's no reason to stay here if Beep isn't here. I mean, I've got an arm now, which is really all I needed anyway. So with that in mind, I set off for the hub, which will serve as my sanctuary and base of operations until I find somewhere better to throw my junk into. Before we continue, I want to take a minute to talk about today's sponsor, War Thunder. Believe it or not, but War Thunder is actually one of, if not the most comprehensive vehicle combat games ever made, and to make it even better, it's completely free on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. When I say comprehensive vehicle combat, I'm not just saying that. This isn't just another game where you aim for a hitbox and watch numbers pop up on the screen. Every vehicle is intricately modeled down to each individual component. When those components take damage, the vehicle will react to that specific feedback, which helps to ensure that each fight feels completely unique. If you do take any damage, War Thunder has a cool X-ray view that can help you identify exactly what happened. You can see which components were hit and what finally led to you sitting in a ball of fire down in the dirt. One of my favorite aspects of War Thunder is the community. I can't think of another player base that is this committed to ensuring the authenticity of the vehicle designs. Even while writing the script, it's around 2 AM and there's just short of 100,000 people playing on Steam. And that doesn't even take into account all of the console players that help contribute to the more than 70 million players, all partaking in these massive PvP spectacles. Surely with a free game you only get access to like 10 vehicles, right? Maybe a couple tanks, a plane or two, and if you're lucky, you might even see a naval ship. And that couldn't be further from the truth. War Thunder provides access to over 2,500 types of vehicles from 10 major nations, including things like biplanes from the 1920s, all the way up to F-15 fighter jets, and so much more. On top of all of those vehicles, each one can be completely customized to your liking with camos, historical markings, and even community-created skins and decorations. There's nothing more enjoyable than winning a dogfight thousands of feet up in the air while dozens of tanks are blowing each other up below you. It all leads to some pretty breathtaking scenes, especially with how realistic the graphics are. Like I said earlier, the game is completely free and is worth checking out in my opinion. It's got a little something for everyone, and I've had a ton of fun playing it over the years. It doesn't matter if you're new or haven't played in the last 6 months. Using the link in the description or pinned comment will gift you a little something nice. And by that, I mean a massive bonus pack along with 3 premium vehicles, a 50% experience and income booster, 2 advanced vehicles to try out, 100,000 silver lions, and 7 days of premium account time. This offer is limited, so it's worth hopping in now to cash in. Alright, back to Kenshi. While leaving, I did see a massive tribe of Fogmen cannibalizing an escaped servant, and the XP was too good to pass up on, so I snuck around and stealth walked into the vicinity until they finished doing whatever it is that they do in the fog. By 11 AM, I'd managed to escape the foglands and was making steady progress to safety. It was around this time that I took a quick detour to check out some unknown buildings on my map. This is where West Dragon of the Holy Nation Outlaws lives. The name may ring a bell to some Kenshi fans, but to me, all I could think of was Wes Mantooth from Anchorman. The names aren't even the same, but that's what my dumbass was stuck on for the rest of this video, and it's important to me that you know that. Back to West though. She's got a 20k bounty on her, so I made a note of that for the future and continued on my way. I made it to the hub by early evening and immediately purchased a shack. I also sold some of my fenced goods from Mongrel, using them to purchase a quality crossbow. After that, I joined the Shinobi Thieves, who will let me stay in their bases, use their training equipment, and sell fenced items throughout the world. Once that was taken care of and I was 10k poorer, I bought a new katana off of one of the thieves, which does over double the damage of my old one, before spending the rest of the night smacking trading dummies, getting my assassination skill up to level 11. When the sun rose on day 7, I made my way down to Squin for supplies. The hub is good, but there's nowhere to get things like building materials or iron plates. Squin's also my favorite city in the game, admittedly. It's a city full of sheks who are hilariously over-the-top racist towards humans, and most of the shops are set up in a way that you can basically steal anything you want and get away with it. It also has some pretty cool companions to recruit, like Double. It worked out that he's a medic because I'm planning to use him to drag poor old Droopy Cock out of combat whenever he can't perform up to expectations set before him. If you're like me and have a crippling addiction to ration packs, you can just go to the second floor of the one bar in Squin and pick the chest through the wall, allowing you to steal an inventory full of them. So, we're 7 days into this legendary bounty hunter video and we haven't grabbed a single bounty yet. What gives, right? Well, calm your tits. Kenshi's a slow burner and takes time to get yourself set up for things you want to accomplish. That being said, I did grab 3 bounty books from a local barkeep. The Red Bandit, Sand Ninja Oni, and the Preacher. Not that many of you really care about this, but I also bought the rest of the building materials needed for my shack and set off back to the hub where I fixed up the shelter, officially giving us a home. I assigned Double to mining iron so that we could level our strength, and set off to find some bandits to throw things. Oh, also, remember that random tower that attacked me on the outskirts of the Great Desert? Well, that's where Sand Ninja Oni lives. I only realized it after reading his contract, but it's nice to know I already encountered him in some capacity. Anyway, back to combat, I need to improve. And in Kenshi, the only way to get better is to get your shit rocked a few times. I thought a bone dog would be decent to work with, so I tried to pick a fight with it, only to get dropped without landing a single shot. This is where Double comes into play. He can rescue Drew as needed and drop him off in the Thieves' Tower to heal up. The next morning, I found a dust bandit camp nearby and sent Drew in to work on assassinations. At worst, he'll get some toughness XP. These early levels are some of the most tedious moments in Kenshi. Sure, you can successfully knock out a bandit, but if you want to use them to train combat with, in a 1v1 setting, well, they're still gonna murk ya. After recovering, I tried again and accidentally kited the dust bandits directly into a huge group of hungry bandits, causing a small fight to unfold. This kind of worked out better than expected though. Instead of focusing on dust bandits, I could wait for the fight to wrap up, then kidnap a hungry bandit and use them to train my skills with. Obviously the dust bandits are going to win and then continue chasing Drew though, so while this was happening, I sent Double in to go kidnap a hungry bandit. Dust bandits are just too difficult to deal with at the moment. Perfect example right here. You try to knock out one and they put you in a coma. Because of this, I tried to focus solely on hungry bandits for now. Using the same tactics, I was able to knock out 2 hungry bandits, kidnapping 1 to challenge in an epic 1v1 on Rust. Congratulations! If you're still actively watching and don't just have me on the background while you play Kenshi on the other screen, you just witnessed Drew Peacock's first victory in combat. If you're now about to frantically rewind to watch it, you might as well like the video. I mean, your mouse cursor's already down there anyway. Now that we have that out of the way, we can get on to the portion of the video where we loot the travel gear store in Squin for backpacks, medical supplies, and maps. When I was done there, I moved over to the general store to grab some books, iron plates, and other supplies that I'd need in the future. By the time the sun rose, I was ready to head back home, carrying a backpack larger than my character, which I found hilarious. Back at the hub, we built out a research bench while our kidnapped hungry bandit sat around and minded his own business. I did manage to get some use out of him though, training assassination on him in between researching. Somehow, I ended up breaking the front door, which led to me holding the bandit in one hand while fixing the door with the other. Just Kenshi things. Double has the big backpack now since I can load it up with iron and make people walk around with it to work on their strength. When I wasn't giving the hungry bandit CTE, I worked on researching storage crates and training dummies. This continued into day 10 until I completed all the research that I could for now. Whenever I got bored though, I'd just beat the shit out of the hungry bandit, heal him up, and then continue with whatever I was doing. I also learned how my door broke yesterday. Seems that this guy doesn't take too kindly to locked doors in this establishment. Well, I don't take too kindly to people busting down my doors, so after I got the upper hand on him, I decided to let him bleed out a little bit to think about what he'd done. That was until Needles, an outlaw taking refuge in the hub, came over to heal him. Unfortunately for Needles, Drew Peacock is an aspiring bounty hunter, and someone has a bounty on their hands. Another day in, and 20,000 Shroot bucks richer. Guess it's time to carry a bag full of iron around until I get bigger muscles. That being said, I think it's time to start hitting some contracts, so at 8 AM, I stocked up on some general survival gear and set out to find Sand Ninja Oni, my first official hunt. About 2 hours into the hike, I stumbled upon some old ruins. Inside said ruins is a man by the name of Taunt. He has a $15,000 bounty on him by the Holy Nation, and I couldn't just pass that up. So I broke into his house, knocked him out, and began heading towards Blister Hill. Not sure how I forgot about this, but the Holy Empire f***ing hates skeletons, and having a robotic limb pisses them off to the point where it's on sight. I ended up losing the bounty on Taunt and was subsequently arrested for assault, even though all I did was try to redeem a bounty. On the bright side, I was able to drop my gear beforehand so I could pick it up once I break out of here. Taunt was also attacked in the middle of the city and left for dead. Throughout the night, I was able to break out of the cage, grab my armor, and hop back in to wait out my sentence. The whole time I was locked up, Taunt played dead in the middle of the street, meaning I might still be able to redeem the bounty on him if I can grab him in time. Unfortunately for me, this is the Holy Empire and they play by their own rules. As soon as I was released from prison, I was charged with assault and attacked again. Somehow, I was able to fully break out and make a run for it, stopping to pick up Taunt and making it all the way to the front gate, only to be dropped just inches from freedom. On my second attempt, I was able to escape and even take Taunt with me, dropping him out in the middle of the street before trying to lose the guards chasing me. This is where things get f***y. For some reason, Taunt was converted back to a Holy Sentinel, so he no longer has a $15,000 bounty on him. I'm not entirely sure how that happened, other than it being a bug with the Bounties Galore mod, which reverted him back to his normal character model. Back to Drew though. The Inquisitors finally caught up to him and knocked him into a coma. There was another hiccup in the game here where I think they were trying to capture me, but I was outside of their range, which resulted in the Inquisitor coming over to check on me every 30 seconds or so. At least until he saw Double trying to pick up Drew, in which case he knocked Double into a coma as well. After laying in a coma for almost an entire day, Drew woke up and was able to save Double's life. At that point, I snuck back near the gates to find my gear that I dropped a few days ago. Unfortunately, it looks like my gear is just gone. I went back and watched the footage and then went to the same exact spot where I dropped it, and it's just nowhere to be found. So it either despawned or the Holy Nation took it and is holding onto it somewhere. Either way, I'm out that backpack, all those medical supplies, the good katana, the crossbow, and Taunt's sword. With that depressing end to Taunt's contract, I basically just gave up on the day, picking up Double and heading back to the hub. Turns out I lost all the gear at the shack as well. I had a ton of stuff on the floor that all looks to have disappeared, unless the Hungry Bandit somehow collected all of it and skipped town. We're too wounded to deal with it now though, so I used the thief's bed to rest and we'll deal with it tomorrow. Day 14 was the start of my villain arc, and what better way to embrace it than by copious amounts of plastic surgery. Now that I got the Kardashian treatment without the BBL, it's time to party. With a thirst for cats, I set out for Dragon's Den, because that's the next best bounty that I know of. It's actually really funny to look back on this while writing the script and cutting the footage, just the fact that I was like, fuck Sand Ninja Oni, and then completely abandoned it. I'm such an idiot. Anyway, while I was slapdicking around in the valley, I accidentally aggroed some beak things, but was able to run past them. Clearly, they were so intimidated by my Naruto running that they just gave up. The Dragon's Den is a mess. There's a few buildings to loot, but they're otherwise abandoned. Regardless, I still hit them up to see what I could find, walking away with a lantern, a sleeping bag, and 2 quality splint kits. Since my combat skills all suck, the best way to go about this is just to bonk West Dragon on the head and then kidnap her. She's wanted by the Holy Nation Empire, the same dickheads who tried to kill me for having a robot arm, so we'll need to find a runner who isn't a skeleton or a Shek. On the bright side, she did have a pretty nice katana on her, so I kept that for myself. The goal here is to hold on to her until I can build prisoner cages, which means it's time to grind research. Unfortunately, I need books to do that, so it's back to Squin again. The first target was the general goods store, since it has all the building mats in it. Once I finished up there, I moved over to the bar where I got bold and knocked out the guard on the second floor before taking some more ration packs. While I was on my way back, Double O was attacked by hungry bandits and knocked unconscious, allowing West Dragon to escape. Well, kinda. As soon as Double went down, the bandits turned to her, and since she has no armor or weapons, they were able to overpower her inside my shack. Once Drew was back at the hub, I challenged West to a 1v1 and was successfully able to kite her around the hub, buying time while I healed up Double before winning the fight. After logging West up in the shack, I took Double to the thief's bed to rest up before returning to base, prompting another fight. With the daily dose of drama all wrapped up, I can focus back on my plans. I'll need a T2 research bench in order to build cages, so I bought a larger building nearby and used Double to hold onto the hostage while Drew made another run to Squin to gather more building materials. Of course, by gather more materials, I mean steal them from the general goods store. Naturally, it was only after getting all the way back to the hub and adding the materials that I realized I was one short. Back at Squin for the third time today, I bought the last building mat, but to make up for my payment, I stole 36 books. Who knows, they could have ended up burning these. I'm probably actually a hero for stealing them. That's the revisionist history I'm remembering anyway. On day 16, I was able to add the final building material needed, completing work on our house. From there, I added several blueprints for things like a T2 research bench, some storage crates, and a food barrel. Once those were placed, I just started spamming research points in order to unlock prison cages. Turns out I actually need a T3 bench to unlock cages, so after that was done, I started working on a fuel generator so that we have a functional bench after upgrading to T2. By around noon on day 17, we'd finished the upgrade to the research bench and added the generator to power it, allowing us to finally research prisoner cages. And on day 18, we built out 2 cages to use for holding bounties or converting bandits. Once West was in confinement, I set out to find a bandit to be used as a runner for us. Luckily, I found a hungry bandit just outside of the gate, so I threw them in the other cage until they recovered. To pass the time, I continued working on strength training. It is worth noting that the hub became hostile towards us as soon as we put West Dragon in one of the cages, so depending on how this plays out, we may need to look at changing locations if this gets messy. By early morning on day 19, we were able to successfully recruit the hungry bandit, though her arm is still completely shattered. At least now she can recover in the thief beds instead of rotting in a cage though. It took almost an entire day, but she's healed up now and ready to party. All that's left to do is walk to stack. She's still just a hungry bandit, so I sent Drew with her as a bodyguard just in case shit started popping off. We made it to stack towards the end of day 19, but now faced another dilemma. It seems High Inquisitor Seda is an Andrew Tate fan and doesn't believe in talking to women. Around this time, the hungry bandit was approached by a holy priest who, mistaking her for a young boy, assaulted her, causing West Dragon to run free. I had Drew drop the sentinel and head back to help chase down West, while the hungry bandit carried Taunt back to the hub. During the chase, West was attacked by some bone dogs, knocking her unconscious and doing my job for me. I was even able to bait the paladins and sentinels into a fight with the bone dogs, which allowed me to pick up West and escape back to the hub. This may seem a little f***ed up, but I have no need for the hungry bandit now that I have a holy sentinel, so I had Double come pick up the guard from the hungry bandit and then sent the bandit into the foglands to die. Moving into day 21, I recruited the Holy Sentinel and went back to stack that morning, carrying West Dragon. This time, I was able to turn in the bounty and receive my 20k cats, even though I got berated for asking for compensation. It's crazy to think this whole debacle took like a week to sort out, but I'm glad we have everything situated now. With the bounty claimed, I headed back to the Dragon's Den to see if there were any other NPCs there with a bounty to claim, but the whole place looks abandoned now. Regardless, I now have 2 successful bounties under my belt, and I felt like it was time to take on a greater challenge. Even with a 30k reward, this is still a crazy bounty to go after. Failure in any capacity typically means death, since Fogmen will just capture and kill ya. Since they typically travel in large groups, I wanted a weapon that I could use to pick them off while kiting. This led to me purchasing a toothpick crossbow, designed for rapid fire. It should help me grind out some of these early levels, and from there, I can look into buying a stronger bow that could potentially one-shot Fogmen. The only problem is that the closest store that sells bolts is in the weigh station. On the bright side, the bolts I'm using come in sets of 200 and only weigh 5 kilograms, so I shouldn't have to worry about running out as long as we're using junk bows like this. While exploring the surrounding area, I found a group of triangle bandits on patrol. Figuring they'd be a great way to test out the new toy, I started winging shots at them. For my first time ever shooting a crossbow in Kenshi, I feel like this went way better than expected, even if I still ended up bleeding out in the dirt. It turns out the entire squad is actually camped nearby, so I set up a camp of my own just outside of their range in order to heal up in between fights and make plans to just keep f***ing with them. Funny enough, I ended up running into the exact same patrol from yesterday and picked up where I left off. This went on for a few hours until the rest of the squad realized what was going on and ran over to assist. Since my legs don't have much protection, they seem to be an easy target, and once they're gone, well, I'm f***ed. The entire day was basically just spent doing this. I'd go in, get some shots off, take a shot to the knees, pull a Peter Griffin on the ground for an hour, and then get up and repeat the process. By day 23, I was over it. There's an unknown tower out in the distance that I wanted to investigate, so I started making my way over there. The Triangle Bandits are busy with some Garu anyway, so they don't really need me. After a few hours of wandering through the mountains, I made it to the tower. It's seemingly under Dust Bandit control, and I'm just stupid enough to try them. At first, I hid behind the tower and tried assassinating the guards as they came out. This only worked for the first few guards though. When they all came spilling out, I ended up booking it down the hill, mainly because they have turrets and I'm not gonna win a fight in the open against them. This led to one of the more exhilarating fights I've had so far between Drew and about 6 Dust Bandits. Since numbers aren't on my side and they have crossbowmen, I tried to use them to my advantage and made a point to line up the swordsmen so that they'd be hit in the back by their own archers a la Pat Tillman style. Once the swordsmen were taken care of, I squared off in my first Kenshi shootout. Combat in Kenshi is one of my favorite things to experience in any video game, so it should come as no surprise that I found myself completely addicted to these crossbow duels. You can also position your camera right on the shoulders of characters so it looks almost like a third-person shooter. Anyway, please enjoy the old Western-style duel. Having just won a 1v6, I celebrated by executing all of the unconscious enemies sprawled around me, before pushing the gate again. This time, however, I took a bolt to the skull. I'm not sure how this didn't just insta-kill me. I mean, I have a f***ing arrow sticking through my head. You know what, I'm just not gonna question it. Even with permanent brain damage, I was able to knock out one bandit with the crossbow before taking another out with my katana. With 2 back-to-back wins today, I fell back behind a hill and set up a small camp to heal before re-engaging. There's still a ton of guards on the turrets at the wall, so I'll need to deal with them too, and I just don't want to risk getting knocked out and ruining a solid day. At around midnight on day 24, I snuck back into the camp and managed to execute both of the guards outside before sneaking in. One of the bosses here has a bounty on him, so I grabbed him and retreated back to the ridge line while I waited for Double to come scoop him from me. It's important to note that a group of bone dogs has roamed in and started eating the corpses here. They actually might have saved my life, considering they attacked and killed several dust bandits while I was recovering. Had they not done that, the dust bandits would have walked directly into me, and I wouldn't have been able to escape. Double made it to Drew before 5 and was able to take the bounty off of his hands, heading directly for Squin to cash it in. While he made that journey, I had Drew push back in and continue picking off bandits. I am gonna pat myself in the back here real quick. I'll fully admit I'm not that great of a Kenshi player, but I did have a moment here where I was able to bait the bone dogs into the gate and then retreat outside of it, locking the gate behind me and causing the dust bandits to have to fight the bone dogs, effectively pitting my enemy against my enemy. That moment was short-lived though, since more bone dogs were waiting just down the hill a ways. I ended up joining the dust bandits in their fight against the bone dogs, which left me unconscious and bleeding out. During all of this, Double had reached Squin and turned in our 3rd bounty. A few hours later, I was back up and ready to fight. First order of business, take out the bone dogs. The last thing I need is for one of these things to sneak up on me and one-shot me as soon as I let my guard down. That being said, I did get some food out of them and took the rest of the day to just heal up. Just before midnight, I snuck back into the camp, killing the final dust boss and knocking out the dust king. I also managed to loot some of the weapon cabinets inside the tower, walking away with a specialist grade toothpick. Upstairs in the tower is a prisoner by the name of Cat. There's a pretty funny story tied to Cat that you can pause and read if you want to. I also didn't think he'd just auto-recruit and decide to follow me, but at least we have another runner now if we need one. Drew arrived at Squin early the next morning and cashed in on our 4th bounty. This one's different though, since the Dust King will remain imprisoned forever. Now that I've got some cash, I figured it'd be a great time to make some upgrades. I traded in my mask for a high-grade iron hat since it looked cool and had a decent perception buff. Oh, I also tried to break the Dust King out of prison and then return him to see if I could cash in the bounty again, but it looks like the devs figured someone would be stupid enough to try this. Anyway, now that the Dust King is locked away, it looks like the Dust Bandits are fighting amongst themselves to become the next king. Naturally, I decided to pop in and wing a few shots off to try to take care of 2 birds with 1 stone. During the fight, however, a group of triangle bandits felt the need to insert themselves into the shit show, leading to 2 groups of dust bandits fighting each other while simultaneously fighting the triangle bandits together, with Drew just kind of hanging out and picking off anyone who aggroed onto him. This fight was all over the place, and to be expected, it left pretty much everyone either dead or passed out on the floor. With a few days of crossbow training in the books, I felt ready to try my luck against the Fog King, so I packed up some necessities and set off for Mongrel. The plan is to set up a small camp there while I hunt for the Fog King. It took about half a day, but I made it to Mongrel that afternoon and paid 3,000 cats to lay in a skeleton bed to repair Drew's arm. I'm not sure if it's worth 3k to do this, but I figured if I paid for it already, I might as well use it. While Drew healed up, Double made his way to Mongrel as well, since I figured I'd need someone to rescue Drew if he was ever captured by Fogmen. The good thing about Mongrel is you never have to look too far for a fight. Fogmen usually run right past the city, causing the guards to sprint out and beat the shit out of all of them. I looked at this as thinning the herd. There's potentially thousands of Fogmen roaming the area, so whenever a chance presents itself to wipe out a squad of them, I need to take it. Especially if it's a situation like this where I have backup in the form of robot spiders and ninja guards. One thing I noticed right away is that hunting Fog Princes has a chance to be just as, if not more, lucrative than hunting the Fog King himself. One Fog Prince head is worth 6,000 cats, so if I can get 6 more, I'll actually make more than I would from the original bounty. By the end of the battle, I'd managed to grab another Prince head, giving me 12k. These can be turned in at any trader as well, so there's no specific protocol you have to go through. With the fight wrapped up, I used some of the money we'd accumulated to purchase a new crossbow. If you're wondering why, well, the lowest possible damage it can do is akin to double the maximum damage that the toothpick can hit, so this should be a huge upgrade. We're gonna be here for a while though, so I bought a small shack to store some of my gear at. That being said, I completely forgot I was a member of the Thieves Guild, so I went into the tower and stole some better pants and a better katana. To pass the time during the night, I broke into the weapon shop and stole a ton of katanas and sabers. There's way better weapons to grab, but I didn't want to overdo it on my first run here. A lot of the better weapons also require me to choose between a crossbow or a two-handed weapon, and I don't want to do that. I'm perfectly content with a smaller sword but a stronger crossbow, than having a strong sword and no crossbow. Once the sun rose, I ran off into the fog in search of the Fog King, hoping to test out my new gear. About 30 minutes into my hunt, Drew was attacked by Fogmen. For some reason, they didn't take him though, which allowed Double to swoop in and rescue him. I set out again that afternoon after spending the morning healing up in the Thieves Tower, only to get demolished again. This crossbow does a shit ton of damage, but it takes forever to reload and shoot. If you're wondering what the outcome is for letting Fogmen run wild, well, they've started eating the shinobi guards. It does feel like they've gotten significantly more aggressive the longer we've been out here. It started with just capturing escaped servants and has turned into raiding the gates of Mongrel to capture and eat the guards. There really isn't much I can do at the moment though, we'll just have to wait until tomorrow to continue on. I kicked off day 28 by stalking some of the larger Fogmen parties I'd come across. I'm not sure if the Fog King will be actively roaming like this, so it's one of those tedious tasks where you need to scan through each member of the squad on the off chance you'll actually find the king if he's even there. As you can imagine, this got boring really fast, and I just started knocking out and assassinating Fogmen one by one until they caught wind of it. This led to another kiting fiasco until they managed to incapacitate and capture Drew. This is where all those days spent lockpicking came in handy. While Double kited most of the Fogmen away, Drew picked the lock on his chains and was able to break free. Unfortunately, I have the awareness of a blind goldfish and immediately started another fight with the Fogmen, only to get captured yet again. On the bright side, this crossbow packs a punch. I literally shot a Fogman's arm clean off its body. While we repeated the escape process again, I noticed a massive group of Fog Heavies patrolling the area. These dudes look like they'd f*** up my day, so I'm just gonna avoid them for now. Anyway, I was able to cheat death twice and make it back to Mongrel this time, spending the rest of the day recovering. 2 close calls is more than enough for one day. Day 29 brought me the largest group of Fogmen I'd ever seen. To be honest, I was damn near certain this was what the Fog King was rolling with, but nah, it's just a shit ton of guys walking around. Since they were busy eating someone alive, I took advantage of the distraction and started shooting at them. This, in turn, pulled most of them towards me and allowed me to slowly pick them off one at a time as we ran around the area. The crossbow is essentially a one-shot kill now if I can land a shot in the chest or their head. If I manage to hit a limb, there's also a good chance I'll just shoot it clean off as well, which can lead to a blood loss KO. While continuing to fall back, I accidentally walked in front of another patrol, pulling them as well and almost doubling the amount of Fogmen after me. Even after half of them gave up, there were still too many to deal with, resulting in me being kidnapped for a third time. What this really taught me is that I need better armor. What I have now is nice for the skill boost, but it provides almost no damage mitigation. I'd rather be able to survive more than 2 hits to the chest than be able to handle a crossbow 10% better. Utilizing the same strategy as yesterday, I had double kited most of the Fogmen up to Mongrel, which caused another battle to break out between the guards and Fogmen. While recovering, I did some research on the Fog King and learned about a place called the Tower of Fog, located on an island to the west of us. So after I healed up, I packed my things and moved west to find it. A more noble man would stay here and help Mongrel overcome the Fogman, but then again, Drew Peacock isn't a noble man. While Drew pushed west, Double was sent back to the hub carrying all of the stolen weapons from when we first arrived. By that evening, I'd managed to reach the coast and even found a high village to rest at. I'll likely stay the night here since it's relatively safe, and if I'm attacked, I can always kite the enemies back here for assistance. Around this time, Double was attacked by Fogmen who chased him well outside of their jurisdiction. I sent the Holy Sentinel runner out to attempt to recover Double before the Fogmen were able to get too far away. Luckily, they were stopped in their tracks almost immediately since a group of cannibals discovered a new food source and ambushed them as they were walking back to their camp. Funny enough, Double managed to escape Fogmen only to be immediately captured by cannibals, which is even crazier because I didn't even know there were cannibal patrols in this section of the map. Immediately after dealing with the cannibals, I swapped back to Drew, who was also attacked by cannibals. This was a much more favorable fight though. Drew's got main character syndrome and an entire high village to fall back on. I cannot stress enough how much fun I'm having with the crossbow now too. I can't believe I've been missing out on this for years now. And as the fight wrapped up, I pushed into the cannibal camp and managed to free a prisoner, healing his injuries in the process. What I didn't expect, however, was for him to have the attitude of those alien dolls from Toy Story. Seriously, this dude followed me for like hours until I was forced to jump into the water just to get away from him. Worth noting here, this isn't the clear blue waters of the Great Desert shoreline. No, this actually isn't even water, it's acid. Alright, a lot happened there. Let's wrap up some of those loose ends. To kick off day 30, I was able to rescue Double from the cannibals. This was actually way easier than I thought it was going to be, mainly because all of the cannibals were either dead or dying from the outcome of the Fogman assault, mixed with a lethal dose of bone dogs. While they made their way home, Drew swam from island to island searching for the Tower of Fog. Surprisingly, if you swim far enough away, you'll find yourself in normal water that doesn't melt your skin off your bones. After spending almost the entire day swimming, I came up on the next island, only to find the Western Hive. This is huge, since the Western Hive actually has a queen. And if there's a queen, well, there's probably someone who's willing to pay a shit ton of cats for her head. This is just a roundabout way of me saying I kidnapped the queen. While swimming back to shore with her, I happened upon some ruins and started looting the place. Unfortunately, I assumed the queen would just play dead here and I could roam freely, only for her to escape while I was distracted. I'm really not sure where she could have ran off to, but I couldn't find her anywhere. Alright, I looked into it some, and there's not really anything I could have done with her from a bounty hunter perspective, so it's probably for the best. While Drew continued exploring the surrounding islands, Double sold most of the stolen weapons at the hub, giving us over 100,000 cats. At around noon, I got a notification that I discovered a tower. This has to be the Tower of Fog, so I started making my way over to it. The island itself is kinda weird. There's gorillas and beak things on it, but only sometimes, and they despawn and respawn constantly, so I'll need to keep my guard up while I'm here. That being said, I did manage to kite a gorilla into the water before lighting it up in a spectacle that'd make the Cincinnati Zoo jealous. After setting up a makeshift camp nearby, I opened the tower door and snuck in, only to be greeted by dozens of fogmen. The best way I figured to go about this was to take the fogmen on in waves rather than all at once. This is a small island, so there's not much space to kite them around. I'd seen a beak thing earlier, so it's a bummer that it must have despawned or swam off, because I totally could have used that to take on the fogmen with and then just shot it afterwards. The fogmen were ready for me the second time though, ambushing me as I walked through the door and tying me up before they started eating Drew alive. Thank God I spent the last month getting the shit beat out of me, because I was literally one chest shot away from going into a coma and losing Drew for good. But because he's a Giga Chad, he was able to endure the pain while managing to break free, escaping to the far side of the island and kicking off the second fight. After slaughtering a few more fogmen, I swam back to the nearby island and set up a small camp there to recover at. I woke up on day 32 to see a gorilla making its way towards me. Luckily, it was the same one from yesterday, and I was able to put him down before he reached the shoreline. Healed up and recharged, I headed back to the tower for rounds 3 and 4. These went much the same as the first two fights, with me kiting groups outside and then around the island, picking them off one at a time and then executing any survivors, where I looted 2 ancient science books. As I continued up, I found a specialist 3-shot ranger bow in a safe along with a legendary mace. The only downside is the Fog King was nowhere to be found. I mean, there's another prince here, so I took his head, but I was really hoping the Fog King would be residing here. Guess I was wrong though. I'm just happy I came away with some decent loot. It would have sucked to spend all this time out here to walk away with just another prince head. With the tower liberated, I began retracing my steps back towards the shore. I figured it'd be much safer to go back to that hive village that I fought the cannibals with than go directly through cannibal and beak thing territory. That being said, this path is much slower. It took me almost an entire day just to make it back to the abandoned research facility ruins where I lost the hive queen at. On the bright side, swimming is now my highest leveled skill, so that's cool. Drew made it back to the hub by the morning of day 34, 8 days after leaving it. As soon as I was back, I swapped out my katana for an arming sword. It deals less damage overall, but has a +3 defense bonus instead of a -4, along with a 10% armor penetration instead of a -30. With a new crossbow and sword at my fingertips, I sought out a group of dust bandits to try them out on. The triple shot bow is f***ing awesome. It does exactly what its name indicates, firing 3 shots in rapid succession. It's not as strong as some of the other bows, but if you land all 3 shots, it can deal catastrophic damage to your enemies. The sword feels good to use as well. I was a little nervous since it wasn't as strong as the previous katana, but you can really feel that 40% swing in armor penetration. I do want to talk about contracts though real quick. I've been focusing on smaller contracts to kind of get myself situated with this playstyle, but I still feel like I need to spend some more time grinding combat skills before I'm ready to take on some of the larger ones. To prove to the rest of the world that I was a force to be reckoned with, I wanted to focus on a couple major bounties: High Inquisitor Seda, Tin Fist, and the Bugmaster. All incredibly difficult to obtain and all pose their own unique challenges. My goal is to hit all of these before the end of the video, but I want to do a unique fight for each bounty. For example, Tin Fist only uses martial arts, so I want to take him on and beat him with his own combat skill, meaning I'll need to grind martial arts for him. Obviously, before we get started grinding combat skills, we need ammo. Since the triple shot bows use specific bolts, I went back to Waystation and stole as much as I could before getting caught by a ninja guard. I started to run before remembering that I have a specialist grade bow, in which case I turned around and lit him up. I'm not a monster though, so I healed him up before continuing with my task. There's this abandoned holy outpost near the hub that I wanted to check out, but as I came up on it, I realized that it was occupied by more dust bandits. Naturally, I sprinted in to get some practice with my new crossbow. Seriously though, I don't know what it is, but these shootouts are so much fun to watch for me. It was only after killing most of his friends that I found the owner of this fine establishment. Ribs the Razor, nicknamed that after discovering My Chemical Romance and his mom's razor blades, is the leader of this ragtag group. Why they chose Detroit as a place to stay in, we'll never know. In all seriousness, I kind of just sat back here and watched most of this unfold. All I really wanted was a true shot at Ribs. See, I was raised on MW2 in Economic Disaster, where the only way to gain respect of your peers is to beat them in a 1v1 on Rust. After hitting a sick 360 no-scope for my final kill, I took Ribs inside to gather my winnings, only to be greeted with more dust bandits. When all was said and done, I was too wounded to attempt a run to Squin, so I brought Ribs back with me and threw him in a cage overnight while I rested up. The next morning, I dropped off ribs, collected my bounty, and celebrated by stealing some more maps from the travel gear store since it was still early in the morning. It's time to start focusing on bounties again though, starting with High Inquisitor Seda. In a previous Kenshi video, I literally just recruited an army and raided the cities, slaughtering everyone. This time, I have like 3 dudes, one of them being Cat, who's basically just some boner who spends most of his time trying to teach everyone what an NFT is. I'm getting off topic though. What I'm trying to say is, I'm undermanned, so I need to think of a different plan other than brute forcing my way into the city. What I came up with was send Drew in, aggro Seda, and then pull him out into the fields where Double and Cat will be waiting with bows. They can shoot down anyone chasing, and from there, we can just all-out brawl for Seda. Oh, and if you're wondering where the Holy Sentinel went, he got eaten alive by a beak thing off-screen because I'm retarded and forgot to hit record. Anyway, I gave this a test run just to see how close I could get to Seda before pulling the entire city. I made it into the HQ building and even started knocking out the guards, putting them in cages before Seda took one look at me and administered Antonio Brown levels of CTE. Needless to say, I spent the rest of the day unconscious dreaming about Candy Mountain and some talking unicorns. During the night on day 37, I realized West Dragon was still caged here. I broke her out and used her as a distraction while I searched for my gear, only to be immediately recaptured. I broke out again a few hours later, but I have no clue what happened to all of my weapons, which is a bummer. With only one guard still chasing me, I decided to just bite the bullet and try to practice my karate on him, resulting in another ass beating. This is what Double's for. We do need another runner for the future though. I was going to recruit another hungry bandit, but as I was picking one out, a dust bandit attacked me, so I just went with them instead. Day 38 was a nice change of pace. The only big thing that happened was that Cat was attacked while working on strength training, so I sent Drew in to help. With that fight over, I had Drew pick up Cat and ended up spending the rest of the day just training strength, going from 33 to 40. It's no secret that my combat skills are lacking, and crossbows can only get you so far. That being said, I have an idea. It's not a great one, or even a good one, to be honest, but it's certainly an idea. At the way station to the west of Squin lies the Band of Bones and their leader, Tora the Fearless. Some of you can see where I'm going with this. I made it to way station that morning and was in a good mood, so I bought a bar thug a drink. Unfortunately, he was too drunk to realize that I'm not trying to hear Grandpa's PTSD war stories and proceeded to tell me his own personal story of the Bugmaster. That evening, I began making my way down to the Band of Bones camp. As I came up on it, Tora just straight up charged me, and, well, to be honest, she f***ed me up. I didn't stand a chance, but that's kind of the point. Round 2 went about the exact same. If it wasn't painfully obvious, my plan is to kite 1 or 2 of these guys at a time, and then continue to get my ass kicked until I win a fight, and then 2, and then 3. It'll take some serious time, but eventually I'll start to see some pretty solid improvement. I gave myself 5 days to see just how much progress I can make, and to be honest, I was pretty happy with the results. I was able to get my katana from 28 to 31, and yes, that's low, but there's a reasoning for it, calm your tits. My melee attack went from 30 to 40, defense went from 43 to 51, and toughness went from 44 to 61. My katana skill was so minimal because after around a day of working on it, I switched over to a gladius that I'd stolen from Mongrel a few weeks ago. This, in turn, brought my skill with sabers from 1 all the way to 28. Now I totally get 5 days as a long time to grind combat like this, but it was also necessary. Whenever Drew would go down or need to rest for a few hours to heal, I would simply swap over to Cat and work on his skill with a crossbow. I started out with just bandits, but figured pretty early on that I could start pulling a few paladins at a time from stack and working through them. While doing that on the morning of day 45, I was able to recover my old katana that was taken from Drew a few days ago, which I thought was really cool. Like, instead of confiscating your weapons, the guards will just straight up steal them. With that covered, I began my final assault on the Band of Bones. Drew may be wounded, but I've been slowly bleeding these guys for the past 5 days now, maiming and even killing a few of them. I think I'm gonna stick with the Gladius for now too. It just feels way more satisfying to use at the moment. With the camp all dead or dying, I scooped up Tora and ran back to Squin to turn in another bounty. From there, I spent a few hours at the bar recovering before running out to the way station near the hub to steal some more bolts. We hit stack that night, starting with the 3 guards trying to return to base that Cat had attacked that morning. Honestly, I'm not quite sure what I was expecting to happen. I think going into it, I was just hoping for a quick and easy takedown, just peppering Seda with arrows until he bled out. What ended up happening was pretty much the exact opposite. Double and Cat were taken prisoner within an hour of the fight starting, and Drew was captured about an hour after that. I was able to drop the bows before being captured though, so our important weapons are sitting right outside for us. Once everyone was somewhat healed, I broke out and started kidnapping guards. Well, guard. They all aggroed me after I got the first one, but I did manage to escape. Actually, escape is a strong word. It was more like I took a nice stroll through the sand and fired a couple arrows before getting my chest caved in and taken back to a cage. While I waited for that to heal, Cat escaped and broke out West Dragon for the second time. About 15 minutes after that, Cat took a bolt that almost killed him. This was essentially the loop of the day. We'd escape, fight a couple guards, get captured, and repeat. I finally got into a rhythm that evening and managed to take down a few more guards in the process, and even managed to set up a small camp for the group to heal at in between fights. Drew was able to get out of captivity, which really pissed Seda off because he took one look at Cat and the rest was history. That was one of the first times I actually had an oh fuck moment in Kenshi, and it felt like the game knew it too because Seda and his guards completely wiped Double and Drew, taking Double back to his cell. I would have liked to give Cat a proper funeral. Sure, I barely knew him and they really only joined with us because I saved his life and he owed me, but it was still a bit sad to see him go out like that over a 40k bounty. To add insult to injury, a bone dog started gnawing on his corpse. As the sun rose, the slavers came waltzing through, picking up Drew. I noticed they'd also grabbed West Dragon, so she managed to escape the Holy Nation, only to get immediately captured again and turned into a slave. After being carried around for like 7 hours, the slave mongers were attacked by a pack of bone dogs, which gave Drew the opportunity to escape, but not before he freed West Dragon. Back outside of Stack, I targeted the bone dogs in the area in order to prevent them attacking me while I slept, and partially as revenge for them eating Cat. I also got my revenge on a slaver. I even tried to break Double out again, but he was dropped almost instantly. I did get to fight some guards out of it though. The unfortunate part is that I'm running out of ammo and had to switch bows to compensate. By around 1 AM, all of the guards were either knocked out from blood loss or were actively bleeding out and dying. At this point, I started slowly pushing into the city, which went about exactly as you'd expect it to. At least I was able to drop off my gear before they captured me. I broke Drew out later that night after spending the entire day trying to heal up. This is basically how the next few days would go. I would escape, take out a few guards, get knocked out, and then either get taken prisoner or left in a coma, wake up, and repeat. If I was using a controller, it'd be through the f***ing wall by this point. This was so frustrating to deal with. While duking it out with Seda on the morning of day 52, I almost got him. Like, seriously, this was probably the weakest I'd ever gotten him down to, only to be recaptured after messing up one single time and taking a shot to the chest again. This happened a few more times until finally, after almost 7 straight days of getting my ass whooped, I managed to drop Sato with like 50 bolts to his body. Dude was out here putting up a Boromir level last stand with thousands of cats worth of bolts sticking out of him. I wasn't taking any chances with him though. As soon as I realized he was out, I scooped him up and brought him back to the hub. Almost immediately after taking Sato prisoner, the Sheks went on their big push, taking over the hub by the time Drew had woken up the next morning. I tried to find someone in the hub that would accept the bounty, but all I got was a sob story from Kinjo the Ogre Slayer. Since I can't cash out the bounty here, I took Sato down to Squin to rot alongside the Dust King for the rest of his life. The Sheks aren't f***ing around though. They've just started slaughtering all of the outlaws in the hub. Shit was crazy. Like overnight, just waltzed in, set up an HQ, and just instantly began the process of quote-unquote restoring order. At this point though, I've been spending most of my time in the center of the map, so I think it's time to begin branching out east in search of some other unique bounties and legendary gear. By the end of day 53, I'd managed to make my way to Shark, located in the heart of the swamplands. I was hoping to find some type of cool, unique weapon here, but unfortunately, there wasn't really anything worth grabbing. I feel like I've said it a lot recently, but I'm gonna keep saying it. Kenshi is such a beautiful game. Some of the cinematic shots you can grab from just exploring are immaculate. There's very few games that can pull stuff off like this, in my opinion, and they knock it out of the park. Anyway, day 54 was all about exploration. I made it to Flats Lagoon early that morning, and after purchasing several maps, I made my way over to the bar, where I was greeted by this abomination. I mean, his name is literally not a skeleton. Oh dear God. It was around this time that I decided to head somewhere that I've never been before. The Ashlands are just to the east of us, and are home to, well, some of the greatest monstrosities that Kenshi has to offer. It also features some ancient ruins that hold some of the greatest gear in the game. How can I call myself the greatest bounty hunter if I don't have the greatest gear? That's just silly. There's also this strip where sniper bots just roam the area, shooting anyone or anything they see, like land bats for example. During my aimless wanderings, I stumbled onto a crumbling laboratory. That's when I saw it. The one, the only, King Gorillo. In terms of scale, it looks like it's 15 times larger than the average Gorillo, and that's horrifying. If that wasn't bad enough, I walked into the abandoned building only to be greeted by killer robot spiders. As a serious arachnophobe, I can honestly admit I damn near pissed myself when I saw these things. That being said, I was able to regain my composure and come up with a master plan of baiting the Terminator spiders over to the King Gorillo, allowing them to engage in the epic King Kong crossover that nobody asked for. The trick here was to wing shots at whoever was winning. I wanted both of them to incapacitate the other at the same time. If I only target the King Gorillo, well, the spiders will waltz over and slaughter me. But if I only target the scary robot spiders, well, that same King Gorillo is gonna put me under the earth. After successfully taking out both sets of enemies, I called double to loot the place. Those weren't the only spiders though, so I got to work kiting a few around the research facility, winging shots at them while trying to keep my distance. Similar to the paladins and inquisitors of Stack, these guys targeted my legs, and once you take a leg shot, you're cooked. After regaining consciousness, I made the plan to just sit across the acid water and wait. I'm not sure if a mod added these guys in, or if this is supposed to be in the vanilla game, but while leaving Flats Lagoon, Double came across a group of Karate Kid wannabes called Gorillo Bandits. Do you recognize that player model? Looks strikingly similar to a certain character model from the first few weeks. Almost like a Gorillo character model. Unfortunately, MMA is no match for swords and bolts, leaving the entire gang bleeding out at the steps of the city. Only a few hours after that, I got to witness my first Leviathan, and holy are these things huge. I've seen them in other people's playthroughs, but this is the first time I've ever gotten to see one for myself, and god damn I do not want to with those things. I also got to witness a group of skeleton bandits take on a herd of land bats. I'm not sure what the lore is on these guys, but they have cool masks, so I executed one and stole a mask for Double. Now that he's all dripped out, all that's left to do is reach Drew, and then hang out while he does the dirty work of kiting metal death spiders around for a few hours. With all of the spiders taken care of, I pushed into the final floor where the loot room is held. Without even touching the loot room, these spiders alone have made me around 150,000 cats just from the AI cores. Not a bad haul. The loot room has some generator cores, medical supplies, and ancient science books, which are all I really care about. With the lab looted, I tossed everything into Double's bag and sent him back to Flat's Lagoon, while Drew set off to investigate a secret drug farm, hoping to get Gus Fring's autograph. This has been a big learning experience for me. Not only are there king gorillas, but there's also black gorillas. They're similar to the white ones, just a little bigger, faster, and they seem to generally know how to season their food a bit better. Drew made it to the drug farm that afternoon, expecting a massive facility, but ending up with a GTA weed farm instead. Glad to see the expansion of Tegrity Farms into Kenshi has been going well. Even after that little pit stop, Drew still managed to beat Double back to Flat's Lagoon. Selling the AI cores and CPU units brings us up to 283,000 cats, before I dropped 55k on ancient science books and packed up to return to the hub. Most of day 57 was spent recovering from the PTSD we just endured over the last 2 days. It's a good thing I decided to come back here though, considering I have 2 caged prisoners just slowly dying of starvation. Anyway, looking at the bounties I still want to get through, I settled on Tin Fist as my next target. I want to believe that a more honorable man would fight alongside Tin Fist, considering he's basically leading the anti-slave movement across Kenshi. But there's something about that 100k bounty that I just can't pass up on. Outside of that, I recruited the caged Dust Boss so that I can have a runner for any Holy Nation bounties. Tin Fist is located way out in Stovey's Gamble, so I sent Drew on his way there. I know I said I wanted to use martial arts on him, but I don't think I have that kind of time to train it up, so I'm gonna really rely on my crossbow to get close to him, and then take him on 1v1 in combat with my katana. It's been a few minutes, so here's another reminder that Kenshi is absolutely gorgeous. While on my way, I noticed an occupied building marker pop up on the map, so I made a quick pit stop over there. Turns out, Tora isn't the only bounty from the Band of Bones. Xander is the leader of this group, but it's still weird to me to see them this far east. This is one of those rare instances where big things actually likely saved my life, since the Band of Bones switched focus over to them, allowing me to hide in Xander's house. With the fight wrapped up, I continued on my way to Flat's Lagoon. If you're not all that concerned about the bandits or the wild beak things or leviathans, may I interest you in God Ray death beams from outer space? After spending the night sitting at the bar in Flat's Lagoon, I've thought about it, and you know what? F it. We're gonna grind martial arts, because I'll be damned if I devoid myself and you guys of an honest MMA fight. Who knows, maybe we'll even get Joe Rogan to commentate it. In all seriousness, I need gear, so I broke into the armory and stole some clothing that gave me an additional 8 levels in martial arts to help me get started. The only place I could think to go for some honest training was Shem, since there's no shortage of hungry or dust bandits roaming the area. I probably could have gone back to the hub, but with the Sheks controlling the area, I feel like the chances of finding bandits hanging around anymore are slim at best. Worst case, I can always go back to Xander's hut and just get my ass kicked until I finally win a fight, similar to how I did with sabers and katanas a few weeks ago. While roaming, I came across a group of weak thralls and chased them while Naruto running behind them. Eventually, I managed to knock out one and separate it from the rest of the group, using it to grind out some early levels. I'd like to be able to tell you this was an epic 1v1, but in reality, it was more like 2 retards fighting. After spending a few hours kicking the shit out of this thing, I realized that I need a more difficult opponent. You don't get nearly as much XP if you're fighting someone weaker than you, so I began the quest of hunting dust bandits. The only problem is that they usually travel in larger groups, and isolating one can be a massive pain in the ass. I also forgot a splint kit, making it nearly impossible to use my limbs once they were damaged. After spending another night recovering in Flat's Lagoon, I made my way back to Shem, this time carrying a sleeping bag and a splint kit. I didn't find any dust bandits, but I did walk into a group of triangle bandits, sparking what was about to be the ass-kicking of a century. I managed to take some of them out with a crossbow before they got too close, but ultimately was left beaten and unconscious in the sand. This wasn't the ass-kicking I was referring to though. No, that's coming. See, I managed to find a smuggler's bar out in the middle of nowhere and used that as a makeshift base of operations while I began my training. For some reason, this is a popular crossway in the desert for the likes of the Hungry Bandits, Triangle Bandits, and Dust Bandits alike. These groups all stand on business, so all I had to do was wait until they kicked the shit out of each other before going in to clean up the scraps. The only downside of this region is the amount of beak things roaming the area. It seems like there's always at least one that shows up after a fight ends. It helps that I'm beginning to master this crossbow, and it packs a serious punch, so I can oftentimes just get them pretty weak before they even realize what's happening. This may be a little psychopathic, but I also started healing the wounded bandits so that I could keep farming them, even taking the liberty of placing them in the beds at the bar so they could heal faster. Fights like this went on for a while. Training MMA in Kenshi is slow, at least in the beginning when you can't hit shit and subsequently get smacked around by everything. Eventually, I started a small camp just outside of the bar where I could place triangle bandits after putting them in comas. This way, I could ensure that I always had a supply of bodies to train on and could effectively control who I fought and when I fought them. Whenever I ran into times where they were all in comas, I would just start hunting beak things to pass the time. Over the next 4 days, I was able to level my martial arts skill from 6 to 23. It's not great, but I looked at it as a big bump for something as simple as fighting wounded bandits. I wasn't entirely sold on this method though, and ended up finding a group of dust bandits camped nearby. Since triangle bandits weren't quite cutting it, I spent 5 more days focusing on dust bandits and was able to bring my skill all the way up to 61. Way better than that measly 17 levels in the previous 5 days. That being said, this was starting to get boring, and the longer I worked on leveling this, the less time I had to hunt down Tin Fist. Before we get to that though, it only seemed right to purchase a cowboy hat because, well, duh. That evening, we left Flats Lagoons to begin our hunt. I will say, having spent a few days in this area, Stovey's Gamble is easily one of my favorite places in Kenshi. It just feels so desolate and hopeless here, like you're not supposed to be here. The atmosphere feels alien-like, and I love that. On the morning of day 71, I'd marked an unknown city on the map and started working my way towards it. There's a lot of meandering through the mountains here, which was really cool and reminded me a ton of the Battle of Thermopylae, at least the setting with the tight walkways and closed off areas. After making it into the city, the first thing I did was hit up the ranger shop to purchase a ton of specialist triple shot bows. I'll need them for later, you'll see. There he is, the man, robot, skeleton thing himself. Now normally I'd just say f it and try to kidnap him, but it's literally impossible. We also need to take into account that he's viewed as a god here. There's no way to aggro him without essentially declaring war on the entire city, whose population all have late game character stats. Seriously, most of these guys would win straight up in a 1v1, so I'd like to avoid that if possible. The best idea I could come up with was to send out the group to a neighboring city in hopes of recruiting mercenaries. I don't plan on them actually doing all that much, but I really just need them to distract the extras while we focus on Tin Fist. While the Dust Boss made his way to Flats Lagoon, I sent Drew out to Morn to see if I could hire anyone there. Unfortunately, there's nothing in Morn that I can use. While that was going on, I was able to find and hire a group of mercs from Flats Lagoon, but there's only 2 of them. Ultimately, I have a grand total of 2 hired mercs for this assault. Having sat on it for a few minutes, I think I have a plan. I'll set up a trap at the base of the mountain with the mercs and the runners. There's also a group of land bats nearby that I can kite over. While that's going on, Drew will run in and aggro Tin Fist. This should end up triggering him and all of his allies to chase Drew down. If he's fast enough, the goal is to make it to the bottom of the mountain where they'll walk directly into a sea of land bats, allowing us to wing shots at them while they take on these abominations. Well, it kinda worked. Both of the mercs got dropped right away, but I was able to take out some of the more skilled guards. I tried this method 2 more times, but the land bats were less and less effective, resulting in us getting shit stomped. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to be able to do this, to be honest. It makes sense in the vanilla game since every fight is a 1v1, but I'm running the 5 attack slots mod, meaning you can engage in a 1v5 fight, which kinda just makes this impossible. For the first time in this playthrough, I had to come to grips with the fact that I was simply not good enough to take on this bounty. To add insult to injury, we almost got entirely wiped out by land bats and gorillas while trying to make it home. Most of day 74 was spent making the return journey to the hub. When I finally made it back, I noticed that the Sheks were fighting some of Kral's chosen, so I kidnapped and began converting the downed enemies. While that was going on, I sent Drew to Squin to begin recruiting some new members. My goal is to amass a large squad of wannabe assassins and train them to become masters with a crossbow, which we'll use on the bugs that the Bugmaster keeps around. That being said, we currently have more pressing matters to deal with, like the fact that Shek guards began assaulting us. I'm assuming it's because they hate Kral's chosen, and now that they're in my faction, they hate us by extension, but I'm not entirely sure. While the recruits hid in the base, I continued my conversion tour, recruiting several Sheks from Squin, before grabbing a couple more men from Waystation. By the time the sun rose, the Sheks had gone completely insane with power struggle over the hub, assaulting the Shinobi Thieves Tower, killing or maiming most of the guards. This isn't a winnable fight, and after seeing the writing on the wall, I set up a small camp just outside of the hub before going in and rescuing each downed member one at a time. Having saved most of the crew and our gear, we just need ammo for the bows, which means it's back to Waystation, where I stole a shit ton of triple shot bolts before recruiting 2 more men. With the hub now operating in a police state, the only place I could think to move to was Flats Lagoon. We're gonna need to put in some serious training, but I have a plan for that. And Flats Lagoon has a ranger shop, so I shouldn't need to have to worry about ammo anymore. That being said, we need to make it there first. It doesn't help that when you get swarmed by bandits and all your new recruits have never seen combat before, let alone fired a bow at someone. The settled nomad camp is nearby though, so my goal was to get everyone there, regroup, and continue onwards. Before that though, we're gonna have to deal with all the bandits attacking us. It took almost an entire day, but by noon on day 77, I formed 2 groups composed of people who could walk and the cripples. I sent anyone who could walk with double, while keeping Drew back with the 3 who couldn't walk so that he could guard them until they were healed. About 2 hours after Double's group left, Drew set off with his team. Crossbows are becoming my favorite thing in the game, period. They're so satisfying to use, especially when you get some decent levels in them and can pull off moments like this, where you can have a character quite literally taking out aggressors while your group runs for safety. In other news, Double's group was busy getting their asses whooped by a group of triangle bandits. It's not that bad though, since this will help the new guys build up some toughness. By that night, we were all grouped up and back on the move together again. By day 78, I'd made it to Flats Lagoon and purchased a shack where I built out some general storage. I also bought most of the guys' bows and bolts before finally running out of money. It's crazy to think that at one point I had almost 300k just sitting in my bank, and now I can't even afford 500 cat bolts. We'll make back some of the cash though, so I'm not all that worried about it. I've got other things on my mind, like crossbow training. You see, we're not just hanging out here for nothing. No, I need to get these guys trained up, and the best way to do that en masse is to find a Leviathan and pepper it with bolts. The hardest part of this wasn't even fighting a Leviathan, it was simply getting everyone lined up in a way that they didn't just ball up and shoot each other in the back of the head. And just like that, we've got our first Leviathan kill in the bag. They also have these pearls that you can loot and sell for 12k a pop, so that'll end up funding our bolt needs. I'm gonna do this for a couple days though and see what we can get everyone up to. After spending 2 days doing nothing but shooting copious amounts of bolts into Leviathans, we'd run out of ammo, while also managing to severely injure several members of the squad. Because of this, we decided to head back to Flats for the day to heal up and rearm. While everyone rested, I had Drew break into the ranger shop and steal dozens of bolt packs, along with 3 more specialist bows. Alright, back to the Leviathan montage. While roaming the lands in search of more leviathans to eliminate, I came across some witches at a camp, but they're not alone. Gurglers are something straight out of a nightmare. Despite the assumptions that you may have gathered from their names, they are not, in fact, Mia Khalifa fans. Instead, they look kinda like when Gerald tried to become a dolphin in that one South Park episode, mixed with the aliens from Destroy All Humans. They look horrifying, but they're actually incredibly weak and frail, which allowed us to take over the entire camp within a few hours. I mean, it also helps that we had a capability to just send volley after volley into them before they could even take a step in our direction. This place is home to the Crone. I'm not sure what the lore is about this guy, so any Kenshi experts, please feel free to add any necessary context down in the comments. Anyway, I threw him in one of the cages with plans to bring him back to redeem the bounty on. That evening, I noticed a strange fight between some gurglers, skeleton bandits, crab raiders, and some crabs. Naturally, I couldn't help it and had to join in the fight as well. By the next morning, most of the group was still recovering, so I figured now would be the perfect time to give you the MMA fight you thought you were going to get with Tin Fist. Well, that wasn't really much of a fight, so I guess we'll try again later. While everyone else healed up, I sent Drew out to explore. He didn't make it all that far before he came across this creepy outpost of skinwalkers. No, not the little demon things on that ranch out in Utah. These things are skeleton robots who wear human skin suits to make themselves feel like humans. And some straight up Silence of the Lambs shit, and it was a real shock to see something so fucked up, seemingly out of the blue. This game continues to surprise me. I trusted my training at this point and pushed into one of the buildings to find Savant, who appears to be the leader, holding an 80k bounty on his head. There's a safe nearby that I was able to pick the lock on, revealing a powerful weapon and some more skin suits. Upstairs, there's a peeler machine, which does exactly what you think it does. There's also a masterwork skeleton arm up here, but it's for a right arm, so I don't have much use for it, and I didn't want to take the extra weight, seeing as I was one mistake away from becoming a permanent resident here. Speaking of residents, there's 52 lunatics here, but I really want a shot at that bounty, so I made plans to come back with the squad when everyone was healed up and ready to go. Until then, here's another quick 1v1 against Crone. I still need to turn in his contract, so my plan was to head back, drop off the bounty, re-gear, and then come back out to take on Savant and his army of skeleton meatbags. Unfortunately, day 86 was an absolute shit show. It all started after I lost a fight to a group of skeleton bandits and 2 black gorillas, resulting in the Crone breaking free and running off somewhere. We're in bad shape at the moment, and only having one sleeping bag isn't doing us many favors. I chose to set up a small camp and then grabbed Drew and anyone else who could walk, and started sending them on runs back to flats with anyone they could carry. During this process, a group of drone guards passed through and decided that we would make for some fantastic sacrifices. This was one of those instances where the enemy of your enemy is your friend, as a group of skeleton bandits came through and absolutely steamrolled the drone guards before they could kidnap anyone. I think it's obvious though, if we stay here, we will die. I made the decision to pack up and keep moving towards flats, even if we could only move at a walking pace. If I can be honest about this predicament, this was one of the only times I was actually nervous about losing the group, considering we were effectively one land bat herd away from getting completely wiped. Luckily for us, that didn't happen, and we were able to make it back to Flats Lagoon by around 5 AM on day 87. We're out of food though, so I'll need to steal some. Due to all the trauma, we ended up renting out almost every bed at the bar, which I thought was extensive. On the bright side, we'll never have to worry about food again. By the next morning, everyone was mostly healed up and ready to party. I gave everyone some ration packs and a shit ton of bolts and sent them on their way back to Skinhouse HQ. Funny enough, land bats actually almost crashed the party before we even got started. We made it back to the witch huts on the morning of day 89 with plans to use this as a base camp since it has 2 beds in each building. It looks like the Crone came back here after he escaped back on day 86 as well, and he's got a new look going on. I feel sorry for the bandits who came across this lunatic. Crew taken care of, we rested for a few hours before making our way to the Skin House HQ. After spending a few hours trying to thin the herd, I managed to kill a whopping 1 skinwalker before accidentally alerting the entire group to our location. I also forgot to set the crossbowmen to hold, and they all just kind of sprinted in, resulting in most of them getting pummeled into the dirt. The aftermath was a predicament in and of itself. They were able to kidnap both doubles, placing them in the peelers. Luckily, Drew was able to recover both and get the group out back to the witches' huts to recover. While everyone else was recovering, I chose to send Drew back in to take on Savan, alone. It's obvious that we couldn't take these guys in a head-on fight, but a 1v1 in the middle of the night? I'm taking that every time. Of course, that doesn't mean that it necessarily needs to be a fair fight, though. Having successfully beaten and kidnapped Saban, I set a marker for Heng, the only city that I know is controlled by the United Cities. The biggest challenge here would be walking through some of the more difficult territories in the game in order to get there. Landbat attacks were common during this cross-country journey. If it wasn't Landbats though, it was large groups of skeleton bandits who beat us into submission. With most of the squad incapacitated, Oran fled into the hills, somehow taking all of the bandits with him. This was a bittersweet moment. On one hand, I felt terrible that this poor recruit with 2 broken arms was essentially being hunted down by psychopathic killers, unable to fight back. But on the other hand, this saved our entire squad. See, the skeleton bandits were so busy chasing him that they completely forgot about the rest of the group. I wish I could say that that was the end of this though, but I'd be lying. About 2 hours after the skeleton bandit attack, a group of large triangle bandits came passing through and stopped to join in on the fun. By the end of the battle, Drew was the only one still standing, with everyone else either bleeding out or in a coma. During this engagement, Oran was captured and slaughtered by the skeleton bandits off-screen. I decided to set up camp here, utilizing my soul sleeping bag as a way to heal the party members who were closest to recovering from their comas. That way they could help carry the others. If it's not a skeleton or triangle bandit, it's another wave of landbats. Drew has been the true hero of this endeavor, almost single-handedly holding off bandits and beasts alike. Another landbat attack happened in the afternoon, undoing most of our progress from the day, which was incredibly frustrating. It was around this time that I made the decision. Call me selfish, but a bounty hunter's gotta look out for himself. If Drew stays here, he's going to die. I mean, he's the only one capable of surviving out here, but he's also only one man, trying to protect a whole team of wounded, underleveled, and undergeared recruits. On top of that, he's running out of ammo, and no one else is carrying the bolts he needs for his crossbow. I did get some pretty immediate reassurance that I made the right decision when a gorilla attacked the group around 30 minutes later. Kong tried to save everyone, only to get dropped in one shot. As if this day couldn't get much worse, another wave of triangle bandits made their way over, steamrolling anyone who was standing and stealing all of the remaining food from the group. By that evening, Drew had made it back to Flats Lagoon and was able to stock up on more bolts and general supplies before setting off for Heng. When all hope was lost for our ragtag wannabe assassins, who else to save the day if not for a group of bounty hunters roaming the plains? It was unfortunately all for nothing though, as the group was attacked again just an hour or so later. At this point, I sent the other double to go rescue the OG since he seemed to have been abandoned. During the night, Kong lost a leg while defending the group, which will likely lead to his death. By day 93, I changed focus to just sending out anyone who could run, with the goal of making it back to Flats. I was willing to cut my losses here, even sacrificing one of Krau's chosen who was missing an arm, so that the other member could have a fighting chance. By that afternoon, the OG double was back on the move, though his arm was still completely destroyed. Drew was attacked by slave hunters at around midnight on day 94, which kind of put the whole journey into retrospective for me. It's crazy to think that these guys were terrifying to deal with 90 days ago. Anyway, with the slave hunters out of the way, Drew made it to Heft that morning and turned in Savant, redeeming his 80k bounty. There wasn't really much left to do at this point. I didn't want to take on another large contract since I don't think we have enough time to get into that, so instead I focused on getting everyone back to safety. In total, only 2 members were lost from the trip to hell, Oran and one of Krau's chosen, both of them having sacrificed themselves to keep everyone else safe. Normally, I'd end on day 100 here, but while I was grabbing some closing shots, I came across the Citadel prison. After sneaking in, I found a shit ton of bountied prisoners here. Who knows, maybe this will end up being a little sneak peek for next time. A big thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. A quick reminder to those of you who are new or haven't played in the last 6 months, using the link in the description or pinned comment will give access to a massive bonus pack across all platforms, including multiple premium vehicles, in-game currency, and so much more. Regardless, here's what I was able to get Drew's skills up to. Not bad considering 100 days ago we were laying face down in the sand, missing an arm with no clue as to how I was going to make it through this challenge. If you're still watching, I just wanted to say thank you. It means a lot to me. I've been doing this full time for about a year now, and it's still so surreal to me. Just trying to enjoy the ride while I'm still on it. But until next time, I appreciate you all. Stay safe, and thanks for stopping by.